Hi everyone, I'm Karan and welcome to Karan's Gyan. This video is about the great Indian hospitals. I made a previous video about the great Indian hospitals where I compared Apollo Hospital, Fortis, and Max Healthcare. That time, Max Healthcare had just propped up and was under the management of Abhay Soi and KKR. But now, since it's been 1 year since the exact same thing, I feel we have better data available on Max Healthcare, and thus we can give a better comparison of all three hospitals. In the previous video, I talked about the promoters as well, but I want to spice things up here, and I'm adding other factors that one should pay key attention on when comparing these three companies. And like usual, I'll be discussing size, valuation, and profitability. So let's dig in. Size. Apollo Hospital is the biggest of them all with 71 hospitals, 10,200 beds, and a presence all over India. Fortis is second in the game with 36 hospitals but 4,000 beds. And the locations are not just in India but in UAE and Sri Lanka. So it's more diversified, but with lesser number of beds per hospital. And talking about Max Healthcare, it has only 17 hospitals, 3,400 beds, and it is just in North India and Mumbai. We must also note that these three companies have other businesses as well. I'm sorry, Max doesn't have another business, but Apollo Hospital has three other businesses, such as Apollo Health, Lifestyle, and Pharmacy. And Fortis has a diagnostics business, which has ramped up really quickly because of COVID-19 and COVID-19 related tests. Now, talking about valuation. Since I last talked about valuation, I've seen that the valuation has almost doubled. The price to earning ratio of Apollo Hospital is at astronomical level of 111. And this is something that is a cause of concern because I feel Apollo Hospital is overvalued. Even overvalued companies such as Pidilite don't have a PE of more than 100, but Apollo Hospital does. So one should keep a note of that. The market capital of Apollo Hospital is 61,000 crores and it's trading at a whooping price of 4,200. It has a debt of about 3,000 crore, which is about 5% of its market capitalization. Talking about Fortis. Fortis is trading at 253. I remember when I was coming up with a video last time, Fortis and Max had almost the same price, but now Max is triple of its original price and Fortis is just double of that. Max has literally crossed its market capitalization, Fortis's market capitalization. Max has a 33,000 crore market cap, whereas Fortis is just nearly 20,000 crores. However, the PE of Fortis is 60.29, much cheaper than its peers having PE of greater than 100. Similarly, the price to book value is also much lesser than Max and Apollo Hospital. I can see Fortis has a price to book value of less than one fourth of Apollo Hospital and less than half of Max. But it has a debt of 1,200 crores compared to 460 crores of Max. So one must also note that Max has considerably reduced its debt thanks to the vision of Abhay Soi and KKR. That shows the power of Max management. So what I can conclude is in size, Apollo Hospital is the largest. In valuation, Fortis Hospital is the least valued, and Apollo Hospital is the most valued with the most debt, most PB, and most PE. Now, talking about profitability. Profitability is an important criteria one should consider. If I talk about occupancy ratios, occupancy ratio, now, when I'm talking about profitability, occupancy, ARPOB, everything, I'm talking about the hospital side of business because it is very hard to compare apples to oranges. I can only compare apples to apples. So excluding the other businesses, I have come up with this data and it was a little hard to find. However, I've still come up with it. Occupancy of Max Hospital is 67%, which is between that of Fortis and Max. Max has 81% occupancy. Fortis has 65% occupancy. If I talk about average revenue per occupied bed per day, so it's about 41,000 rupees for Apollo Hospital, that is the least, and 51,000 for Max Healthcare. If I talk about earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, or basically a profit margin, as I would say, per bed, I see that Max still leads the chart with 45 lakh rev earnings, or as I would say, profit margin per bed, compared to Fortis, which has mere 24 lakh profit margin per bed. Now, one must notice that uh, the profit margin for Fortis is 24 lakh per bed, whereas average revenue per bed is 44,000. Why is that? Well, the answer lies in the occupancy. The occupancy is lesser, and as a result, when I consider per bed and not just per occupied bed, there's a huge difference. So if I talk about pre profit margin or EBITDA, here I'm taking all the beds in general. I'm not only considering the occupancy. Another factor that one must consider is return on capital employed. This is the pre-tax return on capital employed. As Saurabh Mukherjee says, and as I've been saying time and time again, ROC is a very important percentage one should see. Max has a ROC of 29%. That means every 4 years, this company is doubling its cash flows. Every 4 years, whatever cash it has, if it's keep putting it back into its business, it is doubling that. Not even 4 years, I would say 3.5, 3.25 years, compared to Fortis that is taking 8 years to double the cash flows it has. And Apollo Hospital isn't doing that bad either. ROC of above 20% is a good ROC, and Apollo has a good ROC of 24%, but not as great as Max. Now, I'll be talking about other factors. Now, these other factors have a very strong role to play. Please notice this profitability is just the hospital side of things. So for Max, it is true. It is. I mean, it is the best figure that Max has because it only has one business to think on and deploy all its expertise on, unlike Apollo Hospitals and Fortis. But on looking at other factors or other businesses, let us have a look at Apollo. So Apollo's 52% revenue comes from healthcare services, but 48% revenue comes from pharmacy distribution and Apollo Health and Lifestyle. As you can see, Apollo has 197 clinics, Apollo Clinic, some 21 Apollo Sugar Clinics, 847 diagnostic centers, 63 dental centers, 75 dialysis centers, fertility centers. So it has small clinics, not hospitals, but small clinics in a variety of medical segments. And in pharmacy distribution, it has 3.6 it has 3.6 million revenue per store. That is a good figure, and it has about 4,000 outlets. So 3.6 million into 4,100 outlets would actually give you the total revenue of 40%. And what is this private label sales? So private label sales is an important thing one should consider. Is whenever, if you've gone to Apollo pharmacy, you would have seen Apollo selling its drugs under its own name. Apollo omega 3 tablets, Apollo vitamin D tablets, Apollo vitamin B complexes, and it has 13.24% of that and various other drugs, but 13.24% of its own private label sales. That is something that is good because 13.4% of 40% is about, I would say, 5%. So 5% of its revenue comes from its own private label of sales. Very important factor that one should consider. Now, talking about Apollo 24/7, this is the age of digitization, and Apollo has its own online consultation application with 10 million registered users and 5,500 doctors. This is a great vision Apollo has deployed because in this age, it is very important to have a digital footprint, and Apollo is doing really well on that front. Now, talking about Fortis, Fortis has an extraordinarily good diagnostics lab. If I talk about the impact of COVID on this lab, you can see there's a good revenue mix of COVID and non-COVID related diagnostics. Its profit margin has consistently risen from the lockdown of March, which was about quarter 1 of financial year 21, and its diagnostic system is having a earnings profit margin of about 22% in the last quarter and about 30% in this quarter, and a good revenue in crores also, as I would see 305 crores in the last quarter and 440 crores in this quarter. That means even though that Apollo is lagging in, Fortis is lagging in its hospitals, it has poor ROC, it is doing okay. It is in fact covering up for the poor performance there by giving a good performance in its diagnostics business. So we can see the number of tests that Fortis is doing in quarter one of financial year 2022. It did 414 million tests. That's 41 crore tests, and each test has had a realization of about 10.6. That is a good figure. Talking about Max Hospital. So Max Hospital has nothing special. So I wanted to add something that is an other factor one should consider in Max Hospital. It is a case study of on Max's acquisition and turnaround. So how Abhay Soi and KKR Group acquired Max and how they turned it around. So after the EBITDA of 590 crores in financial year 20, this is the point where KKR and Abhay Soi took over. Unfortunately, quarter one of financial year 21 wasn't that great because of the lockdown. But whatever after this is on top of this 590. So, for example, if I talk about quarter one financial 22, it says INR of 360 crores more than for fiscal year 19's full year EBITDA. That means in fiscal year they only earned 590 crores, but in quarter one of financial year 2020, it is 360 crores in one quarter compared to an entire fiscal year's about 590 crores. So that means if I consider a whole year, I consider from quarter two financial year 21 to quarter one financial year 2022, it is definitely above the 590 crores, as I can calculate it is 360, 260, 620, 770, and plus 140, that's about 910. So 910 crores was earned in this financial year compared to 590 crores of in financial year 2020. Now, talking about earnings, talking about the profit margin has consistently risen. Except these two periods right here, it has consistently been rising, and that shows the power of the promoters who are running the Max Group. So, guys, this is my take on the great Indian hospitals. Your analysis is based on your understanding of my video, and you can go over this video again and again. I'll be publishing PDF copies of this link as well. I'm finding a Google Doc which I can share publicly. So please go through it and please let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to discuss. Thank you so much and have a very nice day. Cheers.